Hello, my friends. Okay, another video. Today is the 28th of May, Wednesday, and I'm going to a few thoughts that I have. I'm going to deal with three things today, perhaps in very general terms, but I hope I can um, say something worthwhile. One has to do with politics. And it is reflecting on what has happened to President Macron in France. You have all seen the video. I don't want to go into that. You have already seen it, but reflect on what is happening to our leaders and elites and the difference between what is happening to uh, men, men leaders and female leaders. So I'm going to uh, talk a little bit about Macron and also as an exemplar of women leaders. I'm going to pick a little bit on the young lady. She's in her early 40s, Kaja Kallas, who used to be the Prime Minister of Estonia, and she now has the office of Foreign Affairs for the European Commission, I believe. I'm going to talk a little bit, reflect a little bit about that. Then I'm going to address myself actually to the Orthodox um, Church, to the people who are in the Greek or Russian Orthodox Church, not because I have anything to add or teach necessarily, but because scrolling on my phone, I came across a YouTube channel who I don't subscribe to them. I forget the name of the channel. In any case, they talk about politics, but this particular time, the lady said, and I'm going to interview so and so, we're going to talk about politics, and he's also a, a member of the Orthodox Church, and he's going to say a few things um, against the Catholic Church. And he proceeded to talk. And I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to this, um, just to listen to what an Greek or Russian, I suppose Greek, I'm not sure, Orthodox has to say against the Catholic Church at the present moment. I thought it would be interesting. And what I found was something completely different. And I got into a little bit of a scuffle there with comments. I wrote a comment and he replied back immediately, even though I was quite surprised because it was like 700 and something comments. Whenever there are, more than 100 comments, I always feel that they're not going to read it. But somehow he answered back, addressing what I had said, and then I answered back, and then there was nothing else. But it was a sort of a kind of an interesting exchange, and I'm going to share that with you. And the third thing that I want to address is the uh, although I don't necessarily want to talk about the Pope, there are so many channels talking about it, but I am a little bit distressed at so many uh, channels that used to be called or portray themselves as traditional and who are so very much already against this particular pope, and they're actually attacking him directly and sometimes with mockery and so on. And I find that I want to talk to them. You know, again, in general terms, there is only so much that you can enter into a YouTube channel, but I want to address those 3 points today. I hope I won't go on for too long. I lose the sense of time, and the last video on Bishop Hosius went on for 2 hours. Anyway, I said, why can't I just stop at the 30 minutes and then, I wouldn't have to worry about what going to talk about for the rest of the week. I could divide it up, but somehow I get into an argument with myself and I just don't seem to be able to stop. Okay, politics. Macron. All right. I some people find it very funny. I find it distressing what happened to him in that way. Not because I feel any rapprochement with him at all. He's a weak man. He has abused his power. And you can see that when I see him going to another country, and when they go and they sort of walk between the guards, the army and so on, and they walk in between, and they normally just do it, they just go through it and they go along and then they reach the podium where they are going to say a few words. But no, he stops and actually checks that they are okay. I mean, he does really feel like a little Napoleon of sorts. I mean, he's thoroughly enjoying the power and what I find is, and it seems to be a very general thing that is happening to many of our Western leaders at the moment, that they're all falling to pieces. There seems to be a general something about their lives perhaps being rather in their intimate lives, disordered lives. And my point is that they're all falling. There are problems everywhere with these leaders. We are having some problems here in the United Kingdom too with our Prime Minister. Um, And I felt that, you see, they they have all got to power rather easily, certainly in Macron's case, certainly in the case of the Prime Minister of Spain, certainly in the case of, they're protected. Trudeau, you remember now they have a Prime Minister who in Canada who hasn't really been elected by the people. Perhaps it's all legal, I'm not arguing that, but they seem to have risen to power relatively easily and very much protected. You can see that someone, a powerful power, has their backs. So they're able to abuse that sense of power that they have and sometimes even rub it on your nose there on your face. Um, Not caring so much for what the people think of them or whether they do something right or wrong. They seem to take everything that they do to take it to an excess. And that is what happens when you have given up those moral constraints, I think, of what is right and what is wrong. When you're so powerful that no one can do anything to you and you don't need to worry about it because no one is going to take you away from your power. They always make the same mistake, and that is to take that power to excess because they do not have any moral limits to it. And so what happens is that they always end up falling. They themselves create their own uh, falling away into pieces. I think it's because although we see them as being very high up there, they're actually on stilts. Their height seems so high, but they are on stilts. If there is a little bit on a chip on the stilt itself, and it begins to break, then they just fall apart. They fall down to the ground. And this is what is happening to Macron, I believe. They were so confident in themselves, him and his wife, Brigitte Macron, whom we don't even know whether she is a man or a woman, whether Some people even say that he's married to his father, or at least to his uncle, because of all those things. You've heard it, okay? There are no photographs of her first 30 years of life, but it seems that he or she mothered or fathered three children. And the problem is that when you look at the eldest child, he looks exactly like Macron. That is the problem. It's like they're brothers, or it's like they are first cousins, but they are related. They have the same face, the same eyes, the same look, everything. So what is this? So that thing about, she was 40 and he was 14. At first he was 17, then he was 15, then okay, never mind. But just she just fell for him and that sort of thing. That doesn't seem enough. There were more connections there. That seems to be the case, but that is not what I am referring to here. I'm referring to the fact that they felt very confident in their what was happening to the French churches, so many of them being burned. Same in Canada, by the way, and nothing was happening. If you look up in the map of France and how many churches have been burnt in the last few years, it's all over the place. But anyway, Notre Dame, and they put that, oh, whatever it is that doesn't feel as if it is a Catholic cathedral inside. And they were, I felt that they were laughing all the way. Of course, the Olympics and all of that, in which it seems that I was going to say Brigitte Bardot, that shows my age. Brigitte Macron was very much involved there, who was the designer and the choreography, everything else. And they were laughing. Um, Shockingness, as it were. And anyway, so here they are now. They always destroy themselves at the end because their greatness, their height, and everything is built on stilts. It's not real. All right. And it seems that when it comes to the men leaders, they all have something in their backgrounds that people say, could they be blackmailed, something? Okay. Were they put there because they knew that they would be obedient to our interests, their interests, because of what they have on them, that kind of thing? That seems to be more the case with men. With women, it's a little bit different. I'm going to take Kaja Kallas as an example. If I can bring here, let me share with you so that, yeah, okay. So, young lady um, in her early 40s, I believe. Okay. Uh, she studied business. She's now the European Council on Foreign Relations. Okay. Estonian politician categorized as a reliable ally by the Open Society Foundations, that's Soros, having furthered her career by Russophobic statements and support for the MIC. What is the MIC? Not sure. Um, she was mooted as a possible Secretary General of NATO, but instead was elected in 2024, okay, after her Bilderberg attendance, yeah, to become EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs. Okay, fine. She has become known for her very, very strong anti-Russian stand. And this is what I want to talk about. But let me see a little bit of her biography there. She was Prime Minister of Estonia 2021 to 2024. She is the daughter of Siim Kallas, who did well both during Soviet rule and afterwards, where he lost, in inverted commas, 10 million as Estonian Central Bank president. She is a member of the George Soros European Council on Foreign Relations, and okay, that's the same thing, reliable ally. Okay, anything else? Kalla's great-grandfather, let's go to the father. Kaja's, otherwise it's going to take too long. Kaja's father, Siim Kallas, made a Communist Party career in the Soviet Union. He made a career in the Ministry of Finance of the Estonian Soviet Republic. In 1979, at the age of just 31, he was already a director of the board of the state bank Sberbank of Estonia. In the Soviet administrative hierarchy, this corresponded to the position of a deputy minister and was associated with a high social status and access to exotic goods from the West, yes, that the rest of citizens did not have, which were mostly denied to ordinary citizens. He became deputy editor of the Estonian party newspaper, Rahva, the Voice of the People, in 1986, and chairman of the trade union organizations of Soviet Estonia in 1999. In 1991, after independence, Siim Kallas was appointed the president of the Bank of Estonia. Using gold as collateral in 1993, the Bank of Estonia secretly arranged the transfer, secretly is quite an important word here, arranged the transfer via a third party of US $10 million to a Swiss bank. It was part of a contract in which the bank was supposed to receive highly improbable dividends from oil trading. The money disappeared. Kallas entered politics in 1994 as one of the founders of Liberal Estonian Reform Party. The 1995 elections were succeeded by the new party, I suppose. Kallas became Minister of Foreign Affairs from 95 to 96. He later, this was her father, he later was Minister of Finance from 99 to 2002 as Prime Minister from 2002 to 2003. He was European Commissioner between 2004 and 2014. Okay, so my point is this. Her father did very well under the Soviet Union and did very well afterwards. She is part of that elite of Soviet Union times. She's actually daddy's girl. And what happens when you have been brought up with all the perks of one particular regime, in this case authoritarian regime, the Soviet Union, and what happens when that collapses? What happens to you? Well, you can still continue to be or not, because you're going to lose it all. You're going to lose all your perks. So you have to transfer to the other way of doing things if you want to survive, if you want to keep your perks. And it seems to me that the more perks you had, the higher you were in the other regime that collapsed. Now the stronger you have to be against it. And so what I find is that this is a sort of a cleansing of one's past. It's not enough In other words, you have to go all the way, having been all the way on that side, you have to go all the way to the other side. I am with you to the Western side. I am with you. Look. And you have to show how much you are on this new side because you were so much on the other and so high up. And so I think that those who are today from that former Soviet Union so against Russia are also those who benefited personally in the days of the Soviet Union. She is daddy's girl, and they know that. And they have that knowledge, they are aware of it, but don't want to admit it. This is the crucial point. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They know it, though. But because they don't want to admit it genuinely, they project. Yes, they become totally 100%, in this case, pro-Western, denying that admission to themselves, denying who they are and who they were. And they turn that into a sort of this crazy Kayanism. In the end, it's about continuing to keep those same perks. But how you get them from the other side, they go over to the other side, they go over the top to continue to have the same status and to keep those same privileges as before. And so they need to convince themselves that the other side, the Soviet side, was 100% evil, and the new side is 100% good. And that is how they make their obvious, their repulsion, their extreme position, the new one, okay, in order to obliterate what they were before. They need to show repulsion more than disagreement. And so this translates into now hatred for Russia or hatred for Putin specifically. Because in this case, for these people, I think Putin has become this punching ball. When you are a boxer and you need to practice, I mean, you have this punching thing that they punch into. I think that's what Putin has become for them, a punching ball. And what should have been, if you were honest, an acknowledgement, even a mea culpa, become now this punching ball, really. And the more they hit it, the more they get that, or they think they get that official letter of purity, that innocent identity card. The more they punch Putin, the cleaner, the purer they become, so they think. And so instead of actually, since they do not acknowledge that they were the sons and the daughters of the system and they did very well under it, instead of being cleansed, therefore, more and more they become this sack of puss that they can't get rid of. And this happens not only those who were at the top of that other power, it happens also in our societies, in our Western societies, with a democratic tradition, not under an authoritarian regime, that those who, when our societies were divided into class, there was the working class and the lower middle class and the upper class and there were all that. Those who at a certain point, from perhaps the working class or the lower middle classes, benefited from, let's say, the Thatcher years, I think those are now the new woke politicians. And it's exactly the same. The bourgeois, the ones who benefited from what Thatcher did. I'm sure she did a lot of good things in the sense that, for example, yes, people were abusing the benefits and people, there was a certain, oh well, the government will do it for me. And in that sense, she wanted to say, no, come on, personal responsibility. There was a side that it was good, but there was a side that was not so good. For example, the poor were helped to have their own house, the council houses. You waited in line for a little bit, but then even though you were poor and you couldn't afford your house, you could rent it from the government for relatively, certainly less than renting private property. And then she went and sold all those houses. Well, obviously, it benefited a lot of people. I was able to buy my own house at a very low price and so on. You benefited from it. But they didn't build new ones, you see. So it meant that everyone else after you couldn't get access to a house. Perhaps something in between. Perhaps she could have encouraged responsibility in another way. I'm sure there are a million ways of doing this, but not to sell them all and to leave the next generations without a possibility. That was doing it excessively, yeah. And so there were lots of people from the lower classes who benefited from Thatcher and others. Okay, those are the same people who became, perhaps from the working class, part of the bourgeoisie, who are now, if you look at them, they are the ones who are always with the woke ideologies. That is what they have turned into. Okay, what do I have here? Those perhaps lower middle class women who benefited under Thatcher in the 80s, a time where society was being declassed, a time when people became depoliticized, and that was premeditated because they became depoliticized because of a certain material well-being. They did well, and now they moved to the global oligarchy, global governance. A lot of them are there now to keep those privileges. And they have become self-serving and self-absorbed, and in some cases even bloodsuckers. To both, the ones in the case of, for example, Kaja Kallas and those others, what is required is a certain degree of submission. The first, it was submission, complete submission to the West. And in the second case, submission to global governance, oligarchy. Okay, now I'm moving on to another topic. Okay, so the next topic is this orthodoxy. I was just scrolling, and this, as I said at the beginning, this thing came up. And this gentleman, who's American, was introduced as, first of all, they were going to talk about politics, and she was introduced about an Orthodox who has quite a few things to say against the Catholic Church. And I said, oh, okay, I sit up and listen. Because I have never known, I have never been to Greece, which is something I would love to do, but I don't know whether I'll be able to. I've never been to Russia. I am not aware of knowing any people who are Orthodox. Perhaps I know very many, but I don't know. But I have never discussed this issue. Has never come up in the conversation, so I don't know. I have never discussed it. So I thought, okay, so I'll sit up and listen and see what Orthodox think of the Catholic Church. But it became very clear to me that this could not be really an Orthodox, a genuine Orthodox talking like that about the Catholic Church. I know we have our disagreements. I know a little bit about history, but I don't know how they feel about us now. I don't. I know what Catholics feel about Orthodox. We were separated. We feel as if they truly are not like the Protestants who just broke away, but they are sort of brothers and sisters in faith. The Orthodox Church is a genuine, they were together. They were the true Christian church. They have apostolic traditions, the apostolic succession. They have everything, just like the Catholic Church. Okay, true Christian church. Okay. Disagreements, okay. But the way this gentleman was talking is as if for the Orthodox, their main enemy is the Catholic Church. And I thought, that can't be so. That can't be so. There was an aura of resentment, of, I would say, even malevolence towards the Catholic Church. I thought, no, this cannot be so. And it became very clear that, although he didn't say it, but it became very clear to me that perhaps he was certainly American, so he was probably a convert, probably obviously from Protestantism onto the Orthodox Church. And this became apparent because I think he brought with him all the old Protestant baggage against the Catholic Church. And so the three main things that he attacked against the Catholic Church were, first, the Pope. Yes, that is something, that is there, the patriarch, the Pope. Yeah. But then the Virgin Mary. The Virgin Mary? The Virgin Mary. The Immaculate Conception. Ha, ha, ha. And then, no, the primitive church. We have to go back to the primitive church. I said, this sounds to me very Protestant. The interviewer said, well, I am not at all religious. I was raised Catholic. It's amazing the amount of Americans who says I was raised Catholics. I even doubt that because I don't know what kind of Catholic instruction they had to be able to move easily from one church to another. She said that she became, no, her mother, her father was Catholic and her mother was Hindu, and so she became a Mormon for many, many years, and then she left that too. Well, what Catholic instruction will make you go from a Catholic school to the Mormon? I just don't see the connection there. So I don't think that there may be many schools who call themselves Catholic schools in America, who were traditionally, in times past, a religious school, but now they don't really teach the faith. Uh, in any case, she just said, "Oh, nothing to do with anything." But he was going on about the Virgin Mary, and I said, where does this resentment for the Virgin Mary comes from? And he referred to the Immaculate Conception, which surely the Catholic Church defined based on the tradition of centuries and centuries, but it was defined the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin having been born without sin much later on, perhaps even last century, I think. So yes, that was not something that was there when the Orthodox and the Catholics separated, and they might, I don't know, be in disagreement with it. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning the resentment and even hatred that he was laughing at the concept of with the there was so much disrespect there that I didn't think that an Orthodox, even if they haven't accepted the Immaculate, that they could speak about the Virgin Mary with that degree of laughter and mockery, disrespect. I think an Orthodox would be uncomfortable speaking about the Virgin Mary with this degree of disrespect in the same sentence. And I thought, no, you are Protestant and you brought all your baggage with you. And then about the primitive, let's go back to the primitive church. Well, we shared a history for 1,000 years. The last video I did about the Nicene Creed that we shared both together. It was one church, yes. And how this view that the Christians lived in this idyllic place when they had the church, both Eastern and Western, had to deal with so much during those first 3 centuries of persecution, during all the heresies springing up all over the place, because it was that transition from paganism to Christianity, and and customs die hard, and so many people didn't quite know that this was pagan, and there were so many councils there, Toledo councils in Spain, dealing with discipline. No, they would say, you cannot go at 12 o'clock at night with a candle to the top of a mountain and dance around. And we wonder nowadays, what's wrong if I want to go at 12 o'clock at night with a candle to the top of a mountain to dance around? Why can't I do that? No, but they knew. They were trying to separate what was pagan practices and so on. So the church, both united, had to deal with so many heresies and so many problems and so many definitions of what was Christian, what was not, that a blanket statement, let's go back to the primitive church. You mean during the persecutions when there were groups joined? I mean, what do you exactly mean? I think that is one of those very, very difficult periods for the church. Okay, so I wrote a comment and I said, remember what I said, but I challenged that resentment against the Catholic Church. I won't go into that anyway. We exchanged comments. Okay, so that's it. Let me move now to another topic, and that is flexibility of mind, because I'm seeing a lot of traditional Catholic channels being very, very much against and very disrespectful towards the new Pope, attacking him personally already. Have you ever gone inside an armor. You know, those things that you see in the museums, you know, that they use when they fought wars, the whole package like that. Have you ever been inside one of those? I haven't, but I imagine that if I were to go inside and be with this armor from the head, you know, to my feet, pretty soon I would feel asphyxiated, or I would at least feel like I have to draw for air because I can't breathe. And that's the body, but I think it can happen to the mind as well. When you are so inflexible, when you are so rigid in your mind that you see nothing else, this is dangerous. I think you have to open that armor and let some air breathe. Uh, and that happens when we, this rigidity of mind, when we enter into this ideology, one way of looking at things, and we don't consider anything else. Um, because then very quickly you're going to end up, as we do in politics, that is right, that is evil, and that is good, that kind of thing. Um, my first reaction, I did a video on this Pope on the very same day that he came out onto the balcony. And I explained how painful it was that whole day for us Catholics, that I just say I'm Catholic, but sometimes we feel the need to attach this extra adjective of traditional. How painful it was, because we experience the, well, I would even say persecution of the last 12 years with Bergoglio. And we were hoping, my goodness, we were there, trying to get hold of ourselves by our fingernails practically. And I remember, so the first impressions were very important because you were hoping for something, perhaps even not very much, just that he wouldn't be worse, you know? Oh, so anxiety. And he came onto the balcony and he was dressed as a pope. And I said, okay, 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 so far so good, Just that. It was a good sign somehow. And then he greeted, peace be with you, the words that Christ used always. And I said, oh, yes, 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 yes. I was holding on the, okay, because you remember Bergoglio, he came and said, Buonasera, you know, okay, good evening. Hi, how are you doing? I'm very well. Yes, not too bad. How about yourself? Oh, yeah. Could be worse. So everything was kind of good. I said, yeah, 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 yeah. And then he talked. I don't remember what he said. And then and then it was the benediction in Latin and the Salve Regina. And I said, yes, 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 yes. So I had this positive, oh my goodness, certainly he's not going to be as bad. Then they started saying, oh, but you don't know. It could be that he is, the same, but he is much more intelligent, much more clever. And I said, oh, for goodness sakes, just let me at least experience this moment of hope, But then they continued. Those of you who are hopeful, you are being manipulated and so on, they don't allow us for this sense of hope. And when I say hope, I always say, when I'm talking about the church, I always say it is as hope is understood in Catholicism as a virtue. In other words, your trust in God, not as a wish. Oh, I wish it would rain tomorrow. No, a hope because you trust in God, all that. It's a virtue of trust in God. And so they are denying us that hope, which I think is wrong, because it's like taking innocence from a child, not allowing that innocence to develop by itself. Sure enough, the child will find out that Santa Claus is a Santa Claus, but you don't need to break the dream of a child, and you don't need to break the hope that we now have that things will be better. And I said to you that in the things that he said, which I don't remember, but I remember the feeling that he is Catholic. He is Catholic. He's not non-Catholic, and he's not anti-Catholic, because I can sense it, because I was raised in the faith, and I can sense it. I think I show you a picture later on of him in Peru when the COVID thing, that the first reaction was to take the Blessed Sacrament, dressed as a bishop, and throughout the streets. There was no one there, but there he was. All the streets of his little town there with the Blessed Sacrament. And I explained this goes to a sort of a DNA. This goes to yeah, it's the thing that a priest or a bishop would do. This is I had this feeling. Yes, he is Catholic. And today I again scrolling along YouTube knows me very well, because they're always sending me these things that I'm actually interested in. Of course, the ads that they send me, they know me very well, because all the ads, the commercials that they send me are all to do with old women. You know, get insurance for your death, and if your bones are aching, I get all these things. I say, oh, please. So they obviously know me, but I see that today, is it today or yesterday, the there at St. Peter's Square, preaching the gospel. I don't know what the title of the thing was, but Catholic Unscripted, with Dr. Gavin Ashenden. The other gentleman was talking about today and told us what he had spoken about in this homily the other day. But today he referred to the parable of the Samaritan. Okay, you remember the Samaritan. Okay. Was the only one who helped this man who was left injured by the road. And so everyone went past, everyone had other things to do. But the Samaritan, the one that nobody loved, and was the one who actually came to help him. That story. And that was done. He explained it. It was read from the gospel, and then he explained it first in Italian, but then he had all these other people in English, in French, in German, in Chinese, in Arabic, explaining that very short passage of the Bible. And I go again. I don't know whether popes have always been doing this or is it because he's a new pope, or is it because there is some jubilee thing going on there? Had the previous popes, I don't know, done this of at St. Peter's Square, get a little text from the Gospels and explain it? I don't know. But in any case, there he was explaining the parable of the Samaritan. And the first one, he went, even though it was very short, he went very deeply into the meaning of it. The first one was the priest who passed by, not noticing him, okay? And I always interpret it as, those people, the Pharisees, who just, they go to the temple and they pray, but they don't help, in their ordinary life, they don't. But he went a little bit deeper than that, and he said, obviously he was going to the temple, but obviously he was interested in his own salvation. And sometimes you have to realize that helping others in need or putting yourself in the place of others also, perhaps even more, contributes to your own salvation. In other words, don't think only of your own salvation. Yeah, so this is a teaching for a much wider audience than Catholics. And the second one, stop. I don't know what, but he pointed to the fact that, okay, in this parable, this is how I understood what he said, and I can't quote him literally. Sometimes we have a conflict. And this brings to mind that little squabble thing that President Vance had first with Bergoglio about the immigration policy. And then we heard, I don't know if it is true or not, but then we heard that Pope Leo the 14th also did not 100% agree with Vice President Vance and so on. I did a video on that saying they were both right, but they were looking at it from different angles here. I think I did a video on that as part of something else. But anyway, yes, what I get from here, he was saying on the virtue of compassion, which is more than empathy. Empathy is an intellectual, psychological thing. Compassion is always having, when it is a virtue, you always have God up there, and you do it in a vertical way, and you do it because of God being there. Yeah. So compassion, being able to put yourself in the shoes of the other, to see that suffering in the other. Okay, that was his main point. And then I said yes, and this, but compassion is not the greatest virtue. You have to put it in context. For example, if you are driving along the road and, or in this case, okay, he was a man there injured, and you pass by, it could be that you have no compassion whatsoever, you don't care about anybody else, just yourself. But it could be, in some cases, that you have a conflicting responsibility. Say, for example, that you are late for work and you are expected to be there at 9 o'clock because there is a whole line of people who have already been waiting to see you, to ask you questions, whatever it might be the situation. And in any case, you are paid to be there at 9 o'clock. So you have this conflicting responsibility, this duty that may not allow you to stop. You do notice the person injured. You just cannot stop. And then you have to measure. If I were to stop for, let's say, 5 minutes and give him help, it would mean that I would be 5 minutes late in the office. Now, what is more important here? I think those people could wait 5 more minutes. It would not be a matter of life and death for them. And then if I explain to them and I apologize, I am late, but this is what happened, and so on, they would understand. In this case, it would seem that you should stop and give help to this person, even though you were breaking your duty at the other end. But in some cases, it's not that easy. A person Well, another example. You see this person injured in the road, and then you see a little child drowning 100 feet. Okay, you have to go past, yeah, because the drowning is more important. Perhaps you could say, I will be here, and you just wait a second. I have to go and save that other person. But sometimes it's not that easy. And there can be, you have to measure. And the immigration thing was something similar. Jesus never went against Caesar. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is of God. Okay, so he was never a revolutionary in that sense. There are laws, and a vice president has to follow that law because he represents the people of that country, and there is no question about that. So this question of letting others in who may or may not, but for the most part may be, I don't know, taking jobs or benefits away from those who were born in that country. Here, it seems that the responsibility, the first responsibility that the vice president has is obviously to his own people, to the citizens of his country. Yeah. But I think that because of what the Pope said, I think he was saying, but nevertheless, even though you have to expel them, in that there is no room for you here, he was asking for a little bit of humane treatment. In other words, you don't need to humiliate them more. You don't need to treat them as, you know, being devoid of human dignity. Not he was accusing him, but his point was treat them as human beings, nevertheless. You see how conflicting it can be because, yes, compassion, yes, but at the same time you have responsibilities, and how do you measure? Yeah, I think if we all sort of agree on, first of all, seeing ourselves in the situation of others is going to broaden our mind and even our psychology. We will be better for it, never mind the virtue, but take us away from that armor of seeing just ourselves here. Yeah, and you will see the world in much brighter colors. Okay, doesn't mean that you have, in this case, to give up your duties and your responsibilities, but treat them as human beings with a certain degree of compassion. Why not? That doesn't take it away from anything. Okay, so I continue to have hope in this Pope. I know that they are attacking him for having promoted this woman to, she's the second in an office. I don't care. I don't know what it is. I think it's the office for the consecrated persons. Oh my goodness, he starts putting, well, I am one who, as you know by now, I criticize women in power precisely because they have become like men, ignoring what womanhood can offer, which is in different ways, in different forms, and becoming like men. And so you have all these masculine women over there, and the moment that you have these masculine women over there, what happens to men? They become more and more effeminate. And so you have this thing now. Anyway, so I'm not one for putting women there straight away because they're going to cause more problems. I'm all for nuns. Okay, there is something that women can do. Okay, but nevertheless, having said that, it seems that this particular woman is a nun. She has been the mother superior of the Franciscan, the female side of the Franciscans for the poor. She has a law degree, and then she did her doctorate in canon law at the university in Italy. She is a member of the faculty of canon law there. In some universities she lectures. She seems to be highly qualified as a canon law expert. Okay, I have, if he can use that, that's fantastic. But what convinces me not to go against disappointment, I will go against others, I'm sure, not necessarily about this one at the moment, is that she is a Franciscan nun, general, the Mother Superior, the general of that order. And she is there at the office, or like cancery, what is that? The office of the consecrated life for vocations and things. So that made me think, okay, all right, I won't go against her. Not, she doesn't deserve it. She doesn't deserve to be, if she starts doing feminist things, yes, but for the moment, I'll just wait and see. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there for today. I thank you for listening, and bye bye.